Promised, it's time to talk about Olympic golf. Say hello to our golf gurus, DraftKings contributors, Geoff, Ulrich, and Reid Fowler. All right, fellas, need you to tell me if these odds are too high, aka too long, or too low, aka too short for these golfers in the men's field at the Olympics. So we talked about a lot of the favorites this week, and we just heard Jason Sobel talk about some more. So we're going to be looking at some of the longer shots here in this segment. So let's start with South Africa's Christian Bezuidenhout, who currently holds the second longest streak on the PGA Tour of made cuts at 13, one behind Jordan Spieth. Now his odds sit at plus 3,500 this week. Reid, is that too high or too low?
This one's tough, Jesse. I know if we're talking about Goldilocks here, my response wants to be just right, but I'll say right now it's too low. And the reason why, even though he's made a ton of cuts, and maybe for DFS, right, we're talking about he'd be a good cash game play. He'd be someone that maybe not a lot of people are familiar with. Great around the greens, great putter of the ball. And when he gets going, especially in tough events, we've seen him at the top of leaderboards, right, in some of these majors. I just take a look at some of the other guys around his odds. And when you take a look at those who have won this tournament, or, well, we've only had 1 year, right, 2016, the top five players at least had a top five in the last dozen events, a dozen tournaments coming into this, right? And while Christian Bezuidenhout does have solid finishes, you take a look at this class of players at the top, and I think their win equity is so much higher than someone like Bezuidenhout's. Will it be great for South Africa? Yes, absolutely. But I'd rather have Geoff's boy representing the RSA as opposed to Christian Bezuidenhout. Even though I love Bezuidenhout's game, Louis Oosthuizen is a guy that should be here, right, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, he should be, but he's going after that FedEx Cup money. Right?
True. Yeah, makes sense.
He's going after the FedEx. Look, I mean, you look at Bezuidenhout's odds and plus 3,500. It's not that bad. I mean, we have a limited field event, but I think I agree 100% with what Reid said. And it really comes down to, if you're going to take a shot with someone off the elite players, there's players with bigger odds underneath Bezuidenhout that just have similar or maybe even better win equity than him. Siwoo Kim, a guy who's won 3 times on the PGA Tour, is plus 5,000 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Garrick Higo, his countryman, who won on the PGA like a month ago, is plus 5,000. So, you know, when you look at it, there's players underneath Bezuidenhout with far bigger odds. Mackenzie Hughes is another one. I just think these guys are way better value, unfortunately. Love this player. Very talented, like Reid said. He's one of the best putters in the world, but I think there's far better value if you go a little bit deeper.
All right, now let's look at Geoff's countryman, Corey Connors. T15 at the British, missed a cut at the U.S. Open in his last 2 outings. So a mixed bag of results here. He's plus 2,800. Too high or too low, Geoff?
Probably just a little bit too low. I really like Corey Connors this week. Like, I love him as a DFS play. I think I would rather bet him as a top 10 play necessarily, just because I don't necessarily trust that he's going to be able to sink enough putts in what could potentially be like a big birdie fest to get the gold. But Connors is I think he's going to set up very well. He came back to life at the T15 at the Open. Again, I think this week is going to be all about irons, hitting greens. You know, the last time he played in Japan was the Zozo Championship, 2019. He was T6 at another wet course, another Japanese style course. I think this event could be very good for Connors. Like I said, I like him for DFS. I would rather bet him on the top 10 side of the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right there, you're getting plus 200 odds. And again, I feel like with how good Connors hits his irons, he's going to be in the mix. I just don't really want him as an outright play.
All right, Reid, what do you think?
Yeah, let's go to Marc Leishman too in that range, Geoff. Someone that we've liked over the past couple of weeks. Someone who's played well, maybe at this part of the country and this part of the world. Not necessarily in this country in Japan, but at the same time, you take a look at the guys around him, right? Corey Connors. Like, what is his chances of winning, right? Like, we've seen him win once when he Monday qualified, so he can come out of nowhere. Absolutely. But while I do think this is the best chance that Canadians do have in a long time to medal here with Corey Connors and Mackenzie Hughes, talk about a putter who's making everything. It's Mackenzie Hughes, a guy like you see guys around him. I think Sungjae Im has to be worth mentioning here as well, right? With the implications of what he and Siwoo Kim have to do to make sure that they don't have to do their 2 years of mandatory military service. He's someone, Cam Smith was at this number earlier in the week at plus 2,800. He's all the way down to plus 2,000. That's probably a little bit too short. But at the same time, if you got it early, that's the places that I would have gone over Corey Connors, even though the guy's ball striking like the best of them. If that putter isn't on board, isn't firing, Geoff, it scares me. These are big greens. If he can't get there and two putt for par at least, if he's not within 10 feet, it's going to scare me a little bit.
All All right, another player with mixed results as of late, a guy you just mentioned, Reid. Australia's Marc Leishman. Now, he missed the cut at the British after finishing T3 at the Travelers before that. Reid, he's coming in at plus 3,500. Too high or too low?
Oh, man, Jesse, you guys are really good job, Glenn, and good job of getting these questions, because these are tough. Because Marc Leishman, he's probably one of my. I'm still trying to figure out if there's going to be a last cut on the board, just because I do like guys in that 2,000 plus 2,000 range. Paul Casey is a little bit lower, but I do think there's guys like Joaquin Niemann around him that interest me a little bit more. But look, what does Marc Leishman do? His irons get hot, and then out of nowhere, this guy can gain 8 strokes putting. That's what you need at this course, right? It's going to be longer because of the wet rain, Geoff. It's going to play a little bit longer because of that. And that's why I do like a guy like Niemann who can hit it out there. But boy, Marc Leishman at plus 3,500. I'm going to say, Jesse, I want to say it's too low right now, but probably just right.
Yeah. So Jesse's not confused, I did drop knowledge earlier this week, Jesse, that rain actually is wet. So.
Oh, I mean, breaking news.
Yeah. I think it's with Kaufman,
Rain
though.
is
So
wet.
he does that. Yeah, he brings that out of you.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. Geoff, how do you feel about Leishman at plus 3,500 in the rain that will be wet?
Yeah, no, I actually really like this play. I think Marc Leishman's odds are slightly too high here. I mean, coming off a miscut at the Open Championship. Again, and Reid brought up Corey Connors as a good comparable. Connors has won once in his career on the PGA. Marc Leishman has won multiple times. He's won no-cut events. He's won events over in Asia. He won in Malaysia. He lost in a playoff at the CJ Cup over in South Korea. He's from this part of the country, right? Australia. So I like this for Marc Leishman. I think these odds are a little bit too big. I mean, he's played better than Sung Jae Im this year. You've got Shane Lowry at plus 2,200. Marc Leishman was T3, at the Travelers Championships just like 3 weeks ago, ended with a 65. He is a perfect example of a player who can get super hot with his irons and putter, can go low. He's won on a Tom Fazio course before at Conway Farms. I think these odds are very, very good. You're getting a little bit inflated, like I said, because he's coming off a miscut. Probably my favorite betting target if you're not betting the elites this week.
All right, finally, there's a prop on the board that the gold medal winner will be an American. That sits at plus 175. Geoff, you're Canadian, so you can be impartial on this one. Is that too high or too low?
I looked at this one and it really, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I ran the math and what you're getting, but you're getting the top 4 players in odds here on the DraftKings Sportsbook. I feel like if you're a casual fan, you're making like one bet on golf, you just want to get some money down in the Olympics. This really isn't that bad at plus 160. You've got guys like Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele who just dominate these typical short field events, especially overseas, and it's potentially going to be a birdie fest. I think these odds are pretty fair. And like I said, for the casual fan, if you don't want to do too much research, just taking the top 4 Americans to win. Yeah, I think this is fine.
Reid, what do you think?
Yeah. How about we talk about Europe at plus 185, though, Geoff? I think Paul Casey does have that, but he's right. Like when you run the schematics and the math on it, it just makes a lot of sense, right? Colin Morikawa is coming off probably the most confident guy right now, and rightfully so. And JT Patrick Reid, who's all masked up, both eyes and mouth, Geoff. Making sure that he doesn't get nothing can get in the way of him competing at the Olympics. He's a dark horse that we like, that we talked about all throughout the week. So like the other one is rest of the world, I believe at plus 150. Clearly, like you're getting much more from a probability standpoint with those guys. But at the same time, I think Geoff hit the nail on the head there. You're getting the top players in the world right now as a basket bet at plus 175. Ain't bad.